like that such. Depth, tactics, 85 will always win.
Welcome to New Stripe City, a podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie. And first of all, I want to thank you guys for subscribing and listening to New Stripe City. I truly appreciate you guys listening every week, commenting. And I love doing this, man. I'm doing this for you guys. I'm not some big network. I'm just a Bengals fan. I've been a Bengals fan for the majority of my life. We started here with New Stripe City, and so far we've gone on and did bigger and better things with websites and all kind of stuff. So I appreciate you guys, and if you can, share some of this information with some of your friends. Send them our podcast, send them a YouTube link, whatever you can do, man, because we need to get the word out to people that enjoy the Bengals content as much as we do. We're the diehards, so let's go ahead and get the word out, man. So make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's New Stripe City. You can also comment. Like I said, I love hearing from you guys. I like getting feedback from you guys. I like getting ideas from you guys, hearing your thoughts. That's one of the coolest parts about my YouTube channel. If you're listening via podcast, you can get to the podcast on our website. That's newstripecity.com. We have a podcast section there. You can click on that link. You can not only get the video feed, but you can also get the audio feed as well. So whether you have an iPhone or if you have Android, you can get us there as well. For those who have an iPhone, you can find us in the Apple Store. And be sure to leave us a review. If you guys really like the show, let me know. But yeah, like I said, I just wanted to get into some appreciation for you guys, and I'm trying to come up with a name for the group. And I really, since New Stripe City is kind of a play on New Jack City, I want to call you guys CMB, right? So CMB, but for us it's going to stand for the Cincinnati Bengals Mob. So CMB, let's get to some of these questions that I have from you guys. Okay, our first question comes from KG Smooth, and he says, how much of the blame, as far as percentage-wise, do you put on Marvin Lewis for the playoff blunders? And is there any faith that he can turn it around? If I'm thinking about a percentage as far as Marvin Lewis in terms of his blame, I would have to go with about 60%, Ken. And I say that because it's a coach's job to make sure that their team is ready, their team is prepared, that they have the mental fortitude to go into the game with a specific plan. They also make a lot of the decisions in the game that dictates the outcome of the game. And I feel that with Marvin Lewis, he hasn't stepped up to bat as far as having his team ready to play. We always come out flat in big games. The tone isn't really set. He definitely does a good job as far as talking to the media about the game, but for some reason it just doesn't translate to the actual locker room, and I don't know what that is. When I look at his game management, it's kind of all over the place. I hear him talking about there's no such thing as second half adjustments. We all know, whoever's played football before all know that is a lie. When you look at the Steelers game, there were some questionable decisions that were made. In my opinion, on the whole drive with Jeremy Hill, it made no sense to me why you would be running the ball in that situation, given the weather conditions, given the fact that, the game was on the line. To me, I feel like you have to, even in that situation, take a knee. Take a knee, run the clock out. You get the punt back over to the Steelers. They have to drive, 90-something yards in that weather when they weren't really doing anything in the first place in order to, win that game. I think that should have been done. So just to sum things up, I think that he has to shoulder at least 60% of the blame, maybe even higher. But I'll stop and leave it at 60. Now, in regards to your follow-up question, is there anything he can do to turn it around? Sure. I think that he can. I think if he works on some of the management in games, I think that will do a lot for the actual team. making sure that he sets the standards high for some of these players. I think another way that he can bounce back is playing a lot of these players a little bit earlier. It looks like, to me, from my impression of reading articles around here and there, it seems like Duke Tobin and some of the Bengals contingency that consists of Paul Brown Jr. and Katie Blackburn kind of wanted some of the younger guys to play, but Marvin really didn't want to do that. I think he has to change his ways to kind of, in a sense, mirror what the guy out of Atlanta did last year. I mean, he played younger guys, and I think that the Bengals have to do that. Now, you look at some of the moves that have happened this offseason, it seems like Marvin may be open to finally doing that. So I think that's key in turning around the Bengals, but also, like I said, he'll have to manage games better, and he'll have to have more effective game plans. I think that that's, for the most part, what it is. If he can do that, I definitely think that Marvin Lewis can turn it around. I mean, you're talking about a guy who turned the entire franchise around, and I wasn't always a guy who was against Marvin Lewis. I've supported him for many years, for many seasons, but just last year, it just really reached a boiling point with me. As you guys have heard on my older podcast during the season, my old podcast episode during the season, The Funeral, you guys heard how I felt about him. So he's got another year here. He's not looking forward, or he's not expecting to be extended, which is the right move. So he's gonna have to do what he can do this upcoming season. So I appreciate that, KG. I know you as Ken. Appreciate the question. And if you guys want to submit me a question, you can go to newstripecity.com. There's a questions tab. You can send me a message there. So moving on, we'll go into another one. We have, it looks like this one is from Matthew Eilert. I hope that I'm saying it right. I hope it's Eilert. If the Bengals go offense 9th overall, should we get a receiver or a running back? And who? Please do another mock draft. Oh man, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for all of the feedback on the mock draft. I'm actually going to talk about the mock draft later in this show. I'll review my latest one. But in terms of your question, I think that the Bengals should go running back, and I'll also talk about this later on in the show. And I think that running back should be Dalvin Cook. When you look at the Bengals running back situation, initially I was against it. I mean, if you guys have been listening for a while, I kind of was against the whole taking a running back in the first round thing. But now that I think more about it, you have Giovanni Bernard coming back from a knee injury. You have Jeremy Hill, who I'm still somewhat of a fan of, going into a contract year. And, I mean, you really don't have anything after that. Rex Burkhead left in free agency. You have Cedric Pierman, who's been on this team for the longest. He's actually been around since 2009, maybe even earlier than that. But you don't really have anything after that. So are you really going to hit the reset button, 2-3 years after you've had Hill and everyone get adjusted, and then turn around and bring a new back in next year? I mean, I think that you have to go running back. I really think that you have to consider it. I think that the Bengals' problem is that they want to be a smash-mouth, power-running football team, but they also want to be an up-tempo passing team, and it just seems like the two styles don't mesh. That's one of the reasons I would prefer Cook to a Leonard Fournette. Cook, to me, bar none. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, you live in Tallahassee, you're a Seminoles fan." I'm not a Seminoles fan. Let's get that straight right now. I am an Ohio State Buckeye through and through. I've watched Cook. He's a great player. To me, his game is going to translate in today's NFL. When you look at some of the top backs now, a lot of them can do both. They can catch. They can run out of the backfield. They have speed. You look at guys like Shady McCoy, David Johnson, the top guys. I mean, even Zeke, in a sense, he can actually block and pass block. I don't really know if Leonard Fournette can do all of those at an elite level at the next level. And you're talking about a guy in Cook that's a zone runner. He knows how to run through that scheme, and he actually played at Florida State with a bad offensive line. Like I said, I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But yeah, I think that you definitely want to go running back, and you definitely want to go with Dalvin Cook, maybe some of the other guys like a Joe Mixon. But I think that receiver, I really don't see it in the early rounds, just because I don't see a guy coming in and starting over a Brandon LaFell or starting over a Tyler Boyd or even a Cody Cord. And then don't forget about Alex Erickson. So there's a lot of guys still there aside from A.J. Green. So I'd say I'd definitely go with running back there. So with that being said, let me get into another question. And I believe this one's from YouTube. Let me pull this up real quick. And it looks like that's Rob Villot. How about a star tight end to complement our unhealthy Eifert? Okay, I like to play on Eifert. I totally agree. I think that a star tight end to complement Tyler Eifert would be definitely the right thing to do. You look at a guy like O.J. Howard out of Alabama. He has all the tools that the Bengals look for. He's the right age. He's the right size. His size matches up with the Jermaine Gresham and the Tyler Eifert. He has the experience and consistency that they kind of tend to look for. I think Jeff Hobson was spot on when he said that Howard would be a possibility. I wouldn't be opposed to him either because he can be an asset as far as being a blocking tight end as well as a weapon in the receiving game. And then he's also a insurance policy for Tyler Eifert. I don't think that Tyler Eifert, even if they took Howard, I don't think that means that Tyler Eifert is actually gone, but at least you feel a little bit more comfortable with him there. It also gives Andy Dalton another safety blanket, and it also gives him another red zone target. The thing about the tight end position is that when teams blitz and you have a weak offensive line, that's the hot read. Tight end is the hot read. Everybody knows that who's played football before. In terms of it being a receiver, it doesn't work exactly the same way as far as your offensive line because you have to wait for receivers to come out of their routes and set up. It's just not the same as that tight end. That's what the tight end is used for, to keep some of those linebackers at bay when they try to send pressure. So I think that O.J. Howard would definitely be a good pickup for them to complement Tyler Eifert. But like I said, you guys send me your questions and all of that. So let's get to our next thing of business. Obviously, there's been a lot that's happened. We had a trade that actually happened where the Bengals traded a conditional 7th round pick to Jacksonville for Chris Smith. To me, it's an interesting transaction just given his size. He's at 6'1", 266. He's a guy that ran a pretty decent 40. Looking at some of his college stats, I believe he had back-to-back seasons of 8.5 to 9 sacks or something like that. So very good producer. He produced out of the SEC. He was a guy that the Bengals had a 4th round grade on. He went in the 5th round, I believe, 2 years ago to Jacksonville. So he's a guy that they're going to bring in to compete. It's not necessarily the guy that's going to be the answer, but I'll be interested to see where they play him at. He seems like he's a little bit heavier than the Sam linebackers that they've used, where they rotated him at both spots with Chris Carter and guys that we've seen in the past. So this is interesting. I want to see where he actually is going to line up at. I honestly think that it could be right defensive end. So we'll see. I think he's a guy that is going to just bring some competition to the Bengals defense. So not a bad trade, and I think that it mirrors kind of the Taylor Mays trade from years ago where we traded a conditional 7th rounder to the 49ers for Taylor Mays. So we'll see what it does, but like Hobb said, I don't see this really affecting the draft. But one interesting thing is that he's around the same size as Tennessee defensive end Derek Barnett. So that could be something to look forward to coming in the coming weeks. Okay, so next I'm going to get into my mock draft. I posted this, I believe, on the 30th of March. If you haven't seen it, go to newstripecity.com. You can find it under the draft articles section and check it out. It was one of my favorite mocks that I've done, and I've started to see a lot of guys follow suit as far as some of the picks that I made. And with the first pick in the first round, I selected John Allen out of Alabama. Now, let me say this. John Allen, in my opinion, if you've been listening to me for a while, I think that John Allen is honestly the best defensive player in this draft. I love Reuben Foster. I love some of the other guys like Malik Hooker. But to me, Jonathan Allen is just a monster when you cut on the film and watch this guy. He can play defensive tackle. He can play defensive end. No surprise there. And you're talking about a guy that was arguably the number 2 pick in the draft for the longest, and then the shoulder injury thing comes out, and all of a sudden his stock tends to drop a little bit. Now there's no guarantee that he'll be there to 9, but this would be an amazing value for the Bengals to land at 9 if Allen does drop to 9. Now they've never taken a defensive end in the first round, but I think that they'd have to consider Jonathan Allen. I mean, when you look at some of their history, and I've done numerous reports on the analytics for the Bengals. If you haven't checked those articles out, be sure to check them out. I'll talk about them more on the next episode. But when you look at that, a lot of players from Alabama have been considered by the Bengals. You look at Drake Kirkpatrick. You also look at Andre Smith. So definitely would have to think that he's in consideration now. Jeff Hobson also mocked him to the Bengals in his latest mock draft, and he said that they kind of view him as more of a 3 technique, and I kind of question that just a little bit because I believe he's a 6'4", 289, something within that range, and that's typically pretty small for what the Bengals like at nose guard, and even at defensive tackle, that's pretty small for them. To me, he fits more of the mold of kind of that right defensive end / defensive tackle, kind of that Wallace Gilberry kind of mode in a sense where they rotate there. Also kind of how Marcus Hunt was used last year, where he kind of lined up at defensive tackle and between there and defensive end. So I could definitely see John Allen being there. I think John Allen would make this defensive line amazing. You talk about having him with a guy like Andrew Billings, with Geno Atkins, and Carlos Dunlap. I mean, good night. Really. And Marcus Harden returning as well. I mean, crazy. So I had to make the pick there, given the value. Now, in round 2, I have us getting Joe Mixon. I could see this if he's there. Hobbs seems to believe that Joe Mixon could be gone by the end of round 1. I mean, there's no telling. I really think that he could be. I respect Hobbs, and I take his word and heed it. And I think that, depending on if he's there or not, who knows. But second round, I have us taking Joe Mixon. So then we get to the third round, right? And if you look at some of those analytics that I talked about before, the Bengals tend to like to go receiver within the third round. And there I have them picking Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin is one of the guys that I really like out of Penn State. You cut on his film, he's pretty smooth. He seems pretty fast on the field, but he actually ran a pretty decent 40 with a 4.4. So Chris Godwin is a guy that I have there. And then after that, in the fourth round, I have them taking Tano Passanio, a little bit more of a raw prospect. I still think that he can be better than people are really giving them credit for. A lot of people forget that Jason Pierre-Paul was a pretty rock prospect when he came out and developed pretty fast. I'm not really buying the Marcus Hunt comparison, but I can understand why there would be some concerns. But at round 4, you really can't be mad at taking Tano, especially when you already have a Jonathan Allen on the roster. So that gives him time to kind of develop there. And then in the fourth round, I have my guy who I've been telling you guys about. If you follow me on Twitter at New Stripe City, Josh Reynolds, man. Josh Reynolds out of Texas A&M. I still can't believe people aren't talking about this guy. Really reminds me a lot of a Marvin Jones, Chris Henry kind of type. He's very tall. He actually at one point was the number 1 wide receiver on Prime pre-combine. So I wouldn't be surprised to hear his name either. I would love to have him. He's a pretty decent value in the fourth round if he lasts there. And then I wrap it up in round 5 with 2 picks. Kyle Fuller, a center out of Baylor. We all know that Russell Bodine is up next year, and hopefully they look into a replacement for him. He was another guy that was pretty high on Prime. And then we wrap it up with Jeremy Sprinkle, the tight end out of Arkansas, who I was very impressed with. He's a very good combo tight end. He can do everything pretty good. He's a late round value. In another draft class, he probably would have been taken a little bit earlier than he is in this one, but given the depth, he kind of has drifted to the end of it. So I think in the 5th round, you're getting a guy that's probably, if this was last year or the year before, you're looking at a guy that's probably a 3rd rounder. So that's my mock draft. You guys let me know what you think about it. I also have another one coming up pretty soon, probably more than likely either this week, probably one next week. The closer we get to the draft, the more ones that I will drop. So since we've talked a little bit about the draft, for some of my new followers and new listeners, new subscribers, I tend to do this thing that's called Prime. When you hear me talk about Prime, it's basically a formula that I developed that is the most likely candidates that the Bengals will actually pick based off of this formula. If you follow me last year, it had guys on there like William Jackson III, Andrew Billings, who else was on there? Tyler Boyd, a lot of people, Christian Westerman. It had like 4 or 5. I want to say it was like 5 out of 7 people were right on it. And it even had other people that weren't on there, like Kavari Russell, who they signed later, some of the practice squad guys. So Definitely check that out. But this year I'm going to do something different. I'm actually going to be offering it for purchase. So if you guys want to tune in and check out how likely these guys will be picked, I will be releasing it. It will be a digital PDF that you guys can take and use during the draft, and you can kind of cross off guys, kind of like I did last year, and have an idea of who exactly the Bengals are actually going to pick. And the reason that I did this was because, I was just like you guys. I was into the draft. I always wanted to know who we were going to get. But I just guess and look at film and say, okay, this is the guy that I think they're going to get. To me, that doesn't work. That's counterintuitive. Like, why not actually create a formula that's built on what they actually do, not what you hope that they do? And that's what I aspire Prime to be. Now, I'm not going to charge you guys an arm and a leg for it, even though I spent a ton of time doing it. But that's not what I do it for. I do it for the diehard Bengals fans, so you can look forward to having that available. And I'll only charge you guys $5.13. You get it? $5.13, not 10, nothing like that. I mean, if you just got $5, if you can't spend $5 on the Bengals, I don't know what to tell you.
Great cash.
But anyway, look forward to Prime. I'll have that, and once I release it, I'll have all of the full details. You guys can check it out for digital download and enjoy your draft that way, man. I truly appreciate all of the feedback that I received from Prime, and people who have been with me from day one that actually know about it, that still follow me to this day. I truly appreciate you guys too. So next, let's talk about some of the draft visits. So the Bengals brought in Jamal Adams. They've also brought in Dalvin Cook. They visited with Reuben Foster last night, and they're also bringing in, I believe today is Tuesday, I think they also brought in Leonard Fournette. So let's talk about some of those visits. The Bengals are having some pretty interesting visits. We haven't seen anything from Malik Hooker. Jamal Adams is a guy that plays safety that seems like he could play either strong safety or, possibly free. I mean, if it had to come down to him and Iloka, I would think that they would probably play him at free safety, but to me, he's more of a box safety. My man Moody is definitely big on Adams, and I respect Moody's opinion. He's very educated and everything. As far as like the draft and everything, and me and him, we're always talking and bouncing players off of each other, but I just don't really see it with Adams, in my opinion. I'm not saying that he's bad, but to me, he just doesn't look like a guy that strikes me as a top 10 safety, a guy that you have to have. When I look at Malik Hooker, I'm like, oh my God, I have to have this guy. He looks like Eric Berry, looks like, Earl Thomas. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be mad with the pick, but I don't really think that the Bengals will pick Jamal Adams. Next, we get into some more interesting visits with Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is very interesting. He's been number one running back on Prime for me. I quietly have wanted Dalvin Cook on this team for about 2 years. Now, I'm still a Jeremy Hill fan, but, I think my exact words, we're all, some of the guys that you've seen here on the roundtable, we're all in a group chat from the Bengals Real Talk group. And if you're not in that group on Facebook, be sure to join that. But anyways, I was telling these guys, if Jeremy Hill doesn't get his act together, I wouldn't be mad if we went after Dalvin Cook. And now it's actually a possibility. So that's pretty interesting. He was there. Seems like during his pro day, I heard that Zampezi was there. So I think that he's actually in consideration for number 9. And we'll talk more about him later. So let's move on to Reuben Foster. Reuben Foster is a stud. It's good to see that the Bengals are bringing him in to see what he could be and what he could do for this defense. I was a little worried because there wasn't much activity on the Reuben Foster front in terms of our side, or I'm not even sure, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I'm not even sure if the guy worked out this year at a pro day. I know he's had the shoulder injury, and I love Reuben Foster. I wanted him from day one, but the shoulder injury, kind of scares me. When you think back to A.J. McCarron, when the Bengals drafted him, he had a shoulder injury as well, and a lot of people forget that he basically sat out his entire first year. That's one of the issues in determining whether he should be a restricted free agent next year is because of that injury. And with Alabama, guys come in beat up. You look at Drake Kirkpatrick. You look at some of the past guys who would come through there, You just have to proceed cautiously if you do take him. I wouldn't be mad at all if they took him, though. So it was cool to see Reuben Foster in the Natty. He was hanging out with Drake Kirkpatrick, so that was a cool sight to see. And then we have Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette, obviously, the Bengals definitely probably would consider him if they are considering running back. So they probably wanted to get a look at him, Joe Mixon, and Dalvin Cook just to be sure who they think is the best one. I'm still kind of puzzled on how he would fit into this offense. I know that he has a lot of fans, but to me, he's not exactly a fit for our offense. I don't think with this offensive line blocking the way that it does and his running style, I don't think that it would be the best fit for us. But you have to bring him in for a visit. When you're picking in the top 10, you have to bring these guys in, even if it's a little bit of a smoke screen. Not saying that it is a smoke screen, but you have to bring everybody in and do your due diligence because you never know who's going to be there at 9. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook. Back to Dalvin Cook, man. And I don't know, it's starting to really become frustrating just hearing some of the things about him. Because when you cut on the film, you look at the production, what doesn't the guy do? I'm hearing all of this stuff about the off-field concerns, and I'm just going to tell you guys like this. I live in Tallahassee. I've been down here. I've followed Florida State for a little bit, not really that much because they're not my team. But Dalvin Cook really isn't a troublemaker like that. If you look at the article I posted, I go more in depth into his case and all of that. But if you really actually dig and do the research, you'll see that all of the charges were dropped. You'll see that the witnesses basically corroborated that he had nothing to do with the incident as far as striking anyone. His attorney basically was able to prove that, even if he would have struck her, there would have been, she would have needed medical attention. There was just a whole bunch of inconsistencies in the story and everything. So that's being overblown. They talk about the pellet gun incident. Are we really talking about that when guys like Cam Robinson and Tim Williams were actually caught with real firearms? So outside of those two incidents, a lot of people like to bring up his childhood. He hasn't done anything since then, okay? And you're talking about criminal mischief and all of this. To me, I don't know what it is, but it seems like they kind of have it out for Florida State in terms of crucifying a lot of their players. I saw it with Jameis Winston when he was here. He was wrongfully accused. He was never charged, but they never talked about that part. The crab legs incident, that was a fan that gave him crab. So, I don't think that the off-the-field issues will be a huge deal for him at the next level compared to a guy like Joe Mixon, compared to a guy like Tim Williams. I don't think that Cook is going to have those issues at all at the next level. Now, he does have an entourage, but, if he's up in Cincinnati, I don't see guys from Miami really following and flocking to him in Cincinnati. He doesn't need to be in Florida, so he can kind of be away from those guys. But when we stop talking about that stuff, like the guy is the most talented running back in this class. He's the most NFL-ready running back. I mean, I'm almost tired of trying to make this point. But he's been constantly looked over for years, and now he's still getting looked over at the NFL level, to the point that some people are saying that he's, third, fourth, to the point that he's going to fall in the second round. That is the biggest smokescreen I've ever heard of in my life. There is no way that this guy will fall to the second round. Okay, I think that Joe Mixon has a better chance of falling to the second round than Dalvin Cook. But when you look at some of the teams that he's visited with, they're all in the top 15. Okay, he's visited with us. He's even visited with the Jaguars, who I think, and a lot of people around here tend to think, he has a shot of really going number 4 overall to the Jags. It depends on what Coughlin wants to do, but if the GM probably would have his choice, he'd definitely pick probably Cook over Fournette. They tend to favor a lot of the Florida college athletes here, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him there, and it makes it even easier that Jalen Ramsey is campaigning for Cook to be there. And then you look at Tampa. There's no way he's getting past Tampa. Jameis Winston is not letting Dalvin Cook get past Tampa. So, and to me, you're talking about a guy who was up there with Zeke, man. Like, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. I'm not saying that he's better than Zeke, but I've had people who were actually Buckeyes fans that have said that down here that he's better than Zeke. I'm not going to go that far, but he's definitely on the same level. And people are saying that he's not worthy of the 9th pick. I don't see how. I really don't see how. You're talking about a guy that's one of the top prospects in this draft. He's pro ready. He's played in the NFL system for 3 years at Florida State. He's dominated. He's explosive. There is no answer for this guy. There's no answer for him. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Bengals did pick him at 9. Now, why would the Bengals pick him at 9? You look at the running back situation I talked about earlier. It's not in the best situation for the future. I mean, why not take Dalvin Cook? When you look at some of the Bengals running back committees that they've had throughout, I guess going back to 2010, they've only had a running back committee that has had 2 big backs for a short period of time, when they had Brian Leonard and Cedric Benson, and then Bernard Scott. What's interesting is, because a lot of people try to say that he's small, right? Cook is actually bigger than Giovanni Bernard. He's 5'11", 215. I didn't even realize this, but I went back and did some research. The law firm, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, was 5'11", 215, right? And even if Cook is 5'11", 215, if he puts on 5 pounds, he's 220. That's more than enough weight to play running back at the next level. He also can play with Giovanni Bernard. I hear a lot of people saying, well, he's just Giovanni Bernard. I feel like they would be a very good tandem for our offense. We want to pass the ball more. Cook and Gio are conducive to that. And then it's a situation where even if you draft Cook, Jeremy Hill's still going to be the guy. He's going to be the guy, and, Cook can spell him. And a lot of people are like, well, Gio's coming back. I wouldn't want to rush Gio back from an ACL injury. That's just me. You don't rush a running back, a guy that has the cut on his knee, and that's Gio's game. He likes to shake and bake, and Gio's one of my favorite players. Don't get that twisted. I love Gio, but I'm not gonna rush him back after seeing what just happened to guys like Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson. That's not something that you want to play with. I mean, the guy's still young. He's in his prime. We just signed him to an extension. Let him rest. Let him come back on his terms. And then the other thing is, I don't really trust his return timetable. I mean, after you see things like Tyler Eifert and all of that, how can you trust when he's going to be back? And even if he comes back, is he going to be the same Gio? We saw this with Geno Atkins, and he only plays defensive tackle, but he wasn't even the same. So you're in dire need of a running back there. I wouldn't be mad with Dalvin Cook at 9 at all. He's well worth the number 9 pick, and that's all I'm going to say. I can get on the soapbox for Dalvin Cook, but if you're not familiar with the guy, just turn on the film, man. Just look at the numbers, man. Just look at the numbers. The guy should have been at least a Heisman finalist 2 years in a row. And these whole off-the-field concerns are keeping him back. And then if that doesn't convince you, look at FSU's draft record in recent history. Jalen Ramsey, Devonta Freeman. Devonta Freeman couldn't even hold Dalvin Cook's jock strap at Florida State. And you see what he's doing in the NFL. I can name so many more. Jameis Winston, there's so many, man. So definitely, I think that we should consider Cook at 9. And that's all I'll say about that. But I want to also know what you guys feel about, what you thought about G. G is really cool. We've been friends since high school. She knows her stuff, but I'm actually thinking of adding her as a co-host. So let me know in the comments whether you guys want her on. If you're listening just through the podcast, you can tweet me at New Stripe City what your thoughts are. But I think that she would be a good co-host, man. So I might look into possibly adding her on here on New Stripe City. So like I said, you guys let me know what you guys think. It seems like you guys kind of enjoyed her just looking at the comments that we had on the last video. And we're also going to do the draft roundtable. So one of my first videos on YouTube was the draft day video, and it was me, Nardo, Moody, Mark, and we just sat around and talked about the draft. We want to do the same thing this year. If I can't get all of the guys, I'm going to get some of them. I might throw G on there as well, so stay tuned for that. I had to confirm some of these things with them, but we're definitely on schedule to have a draft roundtable this weekend. We'll probably do it with a live stream, so if you're up on a Saturday morning and you want to hear some Bengals news, stay tuned for that. I think it will probably be around 10:30ish. So I'll let you guys know. I'll probably put some kind of announcement on either the Facebook or either the Twitter or something like that. But yeah, we'll definitely be talking draft because it's around that time to start talking draft. And I don't want you guys to just hear my views. I like to hear everybody's views, not just mine. And after that, on the next show, when it's back to the podcast, I guess, and back to the normal format, we'll go through some of the draft analytics that I put up on there. And if you haven't seen them, take a look at them. I can't tell you guys enough to take a look at them. It was another thing that I kind of used in conjunction with Prime last year that helped me kind of predict some of those picks, like Tyler Boyd and all of those. And I'll just go through and show you guys that the numbers kind of do matter, that the Bengals are a team that tends to kind of repeat itself. I mean, hopefully I don't give away too many secrets. Hopefully there aren't any infiltrators on here, trying to buy Prime or any of that, but definitely get ready for some draft jam-packed stuff. But as always, I love the support from you guys. I can't believe that we got a website now. We're a website now. Y'all realize that, right? We went from a podcast to a YouTube channel to a website. I mean, the sky's the limit, man. I'm not an ESPN. I'm not a media affiliate or anything. It's just me, man. It's just me. So I appreciate the feedback on the site. I designed it myself. I do pretty much everything myself. But let me let you guys know what you can find there. You can find all the most recent Bengals news that's out there. I don't really like recycling anything, and nothing against anybody that does, but I'm just not about that. I want you guys to get, every single thing Bengals that you want to look for. To me, it's almost kind of like, I'm not going to say like a Bleacher Report team stream kind of thing, but it kind of filters everything into one location. So when you go to the homepage, all of that news that you see on the first page, that's all the current Bengals news. It's constantly updated. So if anything happens, it's there. You don't have to wait for an article or anything of that nature. It's just there. We also have the draft visits tracker. If you've been paying attention to that, it has all of the Bengals prospects that they've talked to, interacted with, if they were at their pro day. Stay tuned on that because it's always going to constantly be updated, and it's a better indicator of seeing who the Bengals are actually interested in. So be sure to check that out as well. And like I said, Prime is coming. I hope you guys are ready for it. But as always, I'll end this with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.
Always business, never personal.
Here's the 3rd and 7, and the carry goes down the field, and it's caught and breathes in for the touchdown.
Two things are like that, so death, taxes, 85 will always be.